The Oklahoma Sooners got a kicker.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there for tuning in and subscribing to Locked On Sooners wherever they get their podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. The Oklahoma Sooners added a transfer portal kicker, one Austin Welch from Kennesaw State. We're just going to go and take the whole Kennesaw State special teams operation after adding Jacob Ulrich, the punter, earlier in the transfer portal period. Now we've added Austin Welch, their kicker. Jay, I'm just going to run down the stats real quick for you before we get to them. 20 of 21 on point after attempts, 14 of 18 on field goal attempts, and according to Pro Football Focus, he was 11 of 12 on kicks under 40 yards, 3 of 6 between 40 and 49 yards. What do you think about this addition for the Oklahoma Sooners?
So you add him to a room that only has Liam Evans because Tyler Keltner as well as Zach Schmidt both have graduated. So I've seen people ask the question, why are we getting a kicker from Kennesaw State when we have Tyler Keltner, without realizing that Keltner graduated? We brought him in as a grad transfer. So we don't have any more kickers. We have Liam Evans, who has a boot, and we've seen that he can kick it over 50 yards, no problem. 50, I think 56 or 58 is his personal record or whatnot. But you still got to have an additional leg just in case, because you got to knock on wood and ain't anybody going to get hurt. So I think grabbing a guy that's been that consistent between 40 and 49 is pretty darn good, because that's probably the range where you want to make sure you're making every single kick, even though in those situations, the analytics will probably tell you, John, go ahead and go for it. Go ahead and get that fourth down and make an attempt. But if it's a fourth and long and it is in that 40 range, and you bring in a guy that's consistent and automatic from that distance, I think it's totally worth it personally.
Yeah, you got to have the guy that makes the gimmies, and under 40 yards should be a gimme. Now, if you watch the Texas versus Arizona State game, maybe not so much gimmies, but you got to have a guy that's going to hit those consistently, right? And beyond 40 yards, okay, it may not be as consistent. That's just the way of the world with college kickers. You know, if you're hitting 50% above 40 yards, okay, that's okay. You'd prefer better, but that's okay. But the point is, you bring in a guy to compete with Liam Evans, and here's what's going to happen is the best kicker is going to get the kick. We saw it coming out of camp in 2024. Tyler Keltner earned the job. Then Zach Schmidt took over midseason. And Oklahoma was not afraid to change kickers as they needed to. And so I think it's a good idea to add a guy that's a little bit of a veteran, has a year under his belt of kicking at the collegiate level, and seeing what Liam Evans does. Now, if Liam Evans comes into spring ball and absolutely blows it away, then you know you've got your kicker for the next 4 years and you're set. You don't have to worry about that going into next year's transfer portal season. But going into 2025, you got to make sure you have that veteran insurance if Liam Evans isn't up to the task.
Yeah, I remember that Welch he only has 1 year left of eligibility. He spent 4 years at Eastern Kentucky. So he actually played Eastern Kentucky, then went to Kennesaw State, and this past year is the year he was actually kicking. But you make the good point. Liam Evans comes in and he shows out. He's probably going to get the job up front. But you guys all remember, like you said, Tyler Keltner won the job. He didn't make the trip. If I'm correct, it was to Ole Miss that he did not go on the trip. Everybody's wondering what happened. It's either Ole Miss or Auburn. Actually, it's Auburn. Everybody's wondering what happened to Keltner. Did he get hurt? He actually did get hurt the game before, and so he ended up sitting out. They had to have Schmidt travel for the game. So whenever you got only one kicker and he gets hurt, then you have the punter to have to do all the work. I don't think you want a punter doing your kickoffs if you can avoid it. So you want to make sure that you have at least 2 kickers on roster just in case. And this is just what that gives you. You got the Coles 5-star kicker in Evans coming, and then now you have a veteran to be there just in case if Evans doesn't either A, win the job, or B, if he gets, hurt, stomach bug, he gets, somebody runs into the kicker and injures him, which we've seen that a couple of times, knock on wood. You want to have that. But, John, I do like that Coach Deacon is shoring up his room now. He's making sure he's got 2 at each spot. So that, like you said, we have those competitions, because I don't think anybody's going to be the next Luke Elzinger yet, but you never know. These kickers could probably prove us something wrong.
I mean, 4th down quarterback Jacob Ulrich. I mean, he might. He's pretty solid. That Jacob.
Yeah, it's true.
Got a lot of work for that terrible Kennesaw State offense. So
he really did.
It's interesting. I haven't watched Austin Welch kick, but I'm curious if he and Jacob Ulrich were kind of part of their field goal operations. A lot of times, teams will use the punter as the holder in those situations. So if that is the case, then that makes a lot of sense actually to bring in both guys. Then you've got that situation figured out, and you've got your long snapper. You have your long snapper, I believe, already in house. If I'm not mistaken, Ben Anderson's still going to be on the roster going into next year. So you're pretty well set at special teams. Now you just got to find a return game. Like, that's the next key to the special teams unit, is finding a return game that can actually be a plus for you. You hope that's Isaiah Satania on punt returns. You hope that he's going to be able to provide that. Now you got to find a way to create some explosives in the kick return game as well. It's easy to look at, hey, he was at Kennesaw State. Okay, good players come from all walks of life. Not everything is a straight shot to SEC football. I mean, you can go look at a Marquise Brown, right? He was a JUCO kid out in California before ending up at Oklahoma. So not everything is a linear path of development and trajectory for every player. A lot of times you might have to go somewhere, get a little game tape at the collegiate level before somebody can discover who you are, because a lot of times it's hard to really assess a player's abilities at the high school level, because the level of competitions can vary drastically across the country. And so you're just hoping that, hey, these guys coming from Kennesaw State, Jacob Ulrich, Carson Kent at the tight end, and Austin Welch are ready for the big time and ready to come in and contribute at Oklahoma.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't realize, and you made a great point there, John, is that, and what it is this is just a shift in your mindset and the shift of the way that you think about this, right? Look at it this way. We just talked about Hollywood Brown and the JUCO players, because Oklahoma was infamous for bringing JUCO guys in and doing very well. Those JUCO guys have been in a collegiate program. They understand what they need to do. Some of them go there because of grades. Some of them go for other reasons. But when they get themselves together, they end up coming back. They get themselves an offer from JUCO at a D1 spot. Heck, Kendall Dobie was a JUCO guy, Northeast Oklahoma State. He's out there at NEO, a Norseman, and we didn't, nobody really went after him. But then Oklahoma snatched him up out of the portal, and he was one of our favorite defenders. Unfortunately, he got injured, but Kendall Dobie was one of our favorite guys. Think about when you get transfers from the G5 or even D2 level as similar as a JUCO guy, someone that went to a place just to get the opportunity. They show up and produce some numbers, like Giovanni Gibson, which is probably one of my favorite pickups we've got. He shows the ability of finding a way to get open and making catches and getting touchdowns. If he can show half of that production at the next level, he's a huge pickup. Nebraska lived off the JUCO world and, in gray shirts, and they stopped doing that. That's where you start to see them kind of fall apart. Oklahoma was infamous for it. We brought in a lot of JUCO. So that's the way you want to shift your mindset, especially with the transfer portal. Look at those transfers from smaller schools as more so JUCO guys. Give them a year, give them some time to learn the stuff. They may actually surprise you and show you that they're ready to play in the big leagues. Well,
think about a guy like Josh Heupel. I mean, that's a guy that
played JUCO.
Made a jump from JUCO to the FCS, or actually, I don't even know if he actually went. He was going to go to the FCS, and then it ended up going to Oklahoma instead. Guys can come from all kinds of places. I know people are down on the coaching staff and not ready to willingly trust their evaluations, but let these guys go prove it on the field. If it works out, Oklahoma's going to win more games next year than they did this year. If it doesn't,
there's one eval that everyone loved that unfortunately did not work out. Tyree Walker.
Man, and that's one of those.
Just saying. But when we brought him in, everybody was like, what are we doing? Getting this guy from where? What'd you call it? And then he came and said, oh, no, we want him. And then now he's probably going to end up at Georgia.
Yeah. Crazy. And he's going to be a great fit for the Georgia Bulldogs if he lands there, because he just plays with a kind of a mean streak and an edge. But The Oklahoma Sooners are bringing in a former Georgia Bulldog, former 5-star prospect. And it's kind of intriguing, Jay. We'll discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
The NFL playoffs are here, almost here, but it's not too late to get into the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. And there's a lot of good $5 bet opportunities out there, like Saturday, Baltimore Ravens at 19.5 now. They're 17.5 yesterday when we talked about it against the Cleveland Browns, or the Pittsburgh Steelers, who's looking a lot better, plus 1.5 at home against the Cincinnati Bengals, who desperately needs that win. Or the Falcons, who's got to beat the Panthers to try to stay alive for the playoffs. If you want to jump into all that action, you can. All you got to do is go to FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Oklahoma Sooners are welcoming in a former recruiting target, part of the 2022 recruiting cycle, Marvin Jones Jr., who was the number 2 edge prospect in the 2022 class, according to 247 Sports, and was a 5-star prospect. Spent a couple years with the Georgia Bulldogs, spent this last season with Florida State, where he did have 4 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, a little bit better year than what he had at Georgia. So, Jay, what do you make of Oklahoma welcoming in Marvin Jones Jr. for a visit?
Well, it looks like Oklahoma's taking the portal seriously. I mean, there's been talks of wondering if Oklahoma... We just talked about it last segment. You know, we're only going after these small school kids. We're trying to be cheap. We're playing the Moneyball game, in which everybody's not looking at the fact that you told us before. The Moneyball game is not about the cost. It's about the production. We're going after guys to replace pieces of production or whatnot, and not going to look at the cost. Well, a player that played at Georgia and Florida State, you'd expect to be probably pretty expensive, and that's probably a possibility. But we got him on campus. He's visiting right now. It's been reported by Matt Zenith over there, 247. You know, everybody's talking about it right now. That's huge for Oklahoma because we're waiting on R. Mason Thomas to make a decision. We just got Dominic to go ahead and say that he back in. We just think that Robert Spears-Jennings is added in there. We kind of need one more guy that can play like the Ethan Downs role on the defensive line at the edge, so that you can continue to develop and play a PJ Adebawore and a Danny Okoye, who the two that you truly expect to play the most. John, that's a big deal, right? Miguel Chavis has got himself a nice potential piece that could be great for him to mold. And really, this would, to me, solidify him as a developer. If he was to get a player like this and get him to be as productive, he had 4.5 sacks last season at Florida State. If he comes in here and he's able to produce that, if not a little bit more, that does nothing but propel Miguel Chavis in the recruiting trail to show, hey, I got a guy at Georgia and Florida State couldn't really get going like they wanted to. I was able to get him a lot higher than he was before. And at this point, it feels like Marvin Jones Jr. is looking for a good redemption story. And this is probably the best place to do it.
Yeah, kind of the buzz out there right now is that he just may not have been great fits for Georgia and for Florida State. And I'll be curious, is he going to be a fit for Oklahoma? Is he going to be a dude that's going to be willing to be, coached hard by a Brent Venables and a Miguel Chavis? Because they demand a lot. They ask a lot of their players. They're not going to, roll out the red carpet and just make life easy for anybody. I mean, look at Danny Stutzman. Danny Stutzman was a cornerstone piece left over from the Alex Grinch era, and Brent Venables challenged him immediately. Like, are you going to take your craft seriously or not? And if not, then we need to know that. But if you are, then you could be great. And Danny Stutzman turned out to be great. And so, like, if he's willing to come in and listen to what the coaches have to offer, then he'll have a chance to put all the tools in the toolbox to use and be a productive player at the collegiate level. But just kind of the buzz that we're hearing from, guys that cover Georgia and cover Florida State is, to this point, he hasn't necessarily been willing to do that. But perhaps a new home a coach that was recruiting him while he was at Clemson. Brent Venables did recruit Marvin Jones Jr. He ended up going to Georgia. I think it's an intriguing possibility here. I think it's a guy that has a lot to prove, because when you're the number 2 edge player and you're already working on your third team, to me, you still have a lot to prove. 3 years removed from your 2022 recruiting cycle. So I'll be fascinated to see how this ends up. I think he's got all the tools to be great. It's just a matter of whether he's willing to put the work in to make himself great.
Yeah, that's the big question is where is his head at now that he's going to his third school? And, I don't knock on guys that's been to multiple schools when it comes to the portal. You've seen some actually break out, and this could be the opportunity he's looking for to really get his mind right and really get him going. In some players, you run into a situation where they're kind of being pushed out because it's like, you really didn't work out. For him, going from Georgia to Florida State, that Florida State whole debacle, that was wild, right? You bring in DJ Uiagalelei, and the offense was non-existent. And so when everything just started to tank really bad, I mean, did they win a conference game this year? That's the bad part, right? It kind of like Oklahoma State. It's just they didn't even win one. At least we won 2 of them, and we own the state of Alabama. So I'll be happy with that. Exactly. But with that situation was just as brutal as it was. They thought that he was going to be the next Jared Verse. Jared Verse, and then Braden Fisk comes in from Wyoming, in which, nobody liked him, even though I really wanted him at Oklahoma. Those two dominated, right, on that line for them to go 13-0. I thought MJJ could have been that for them. It just, unfortunately, the offense didn't allow the defense to be any good. But I do think that coming here with the defense that's as solid as ours, and now with an offense that we expect to be at least 10 notch higher than what it is. I mean, it was awful last year. As long as it gets into the 80s, we'll probably be satisfied. But that will make the defense even better, because that's a competent offense. Get the offense competent, and you keep your defense. I think Marvin Jones Jr. could do some special stuff. Like I said, this should just be a feather in the hat for Miguel Chavis.
Well, and I think if you do have R. Mason Thomas coming back and you add a guy like Marvin Jones Jr. to go along with Danny Okoye and Adepoju Adebawore, you have the potential to have a bookend defensive end duo like they've got at South Carolina, like they have at Ohio State. There's the potential there for it to blossom into that, to grow into that. You still need a guy that's dynamic off the edge, opposite of R. Mason Thomas. Again, expecting that he's going to return. If you don't have R. Mason Thomas coming back, you definitely need somebody with some snaps under his belt at the collegiate level to be one of your edge rushers. But if you really, to be competitive and to assert yourself as one of the better teams in the SEC and potentially make the playoff and go on a playoff run, you're going to need to have a really, really good pass rush to make it happen. And right now you've got a pretty good pass rush. I think you're really, really good against the run. Your pass rush is pretty good. It needs to take a step up in a couple notches so that you can become great and then help transform this defense to a pretty good defense to a great / elite defense. You still need some help on the pass rush to make that happen.
Yeah. You need some age, and you need a veteran that has an ability of setting the edge. And that's where the question lies. Is Marvin Jones Jr. capable of doing that? Does he have the ability, the motor? Is he ready for the work? Is he ready for the grind that's going to come from that? I'm not going to say he's not, and I can't say he is until we get him on the field. But it feels like the staff feels good about him. If they got him in town, that's probably the most important thing. You get him in for the weekend, you're making some proper moves. And so let's just hope that if he does work out in the conversation, that we close the deal.
I mean, what does Brent Venables always say? You recruit your problems, right?
Yep.
So if they're actively recruiting him, they must believe that there's something to him that they still can unlock, that they believe that they can be the difference in finding the player that everybody wanted to have out of the 2022 class. And at this point, on the defensive side of the ball, I trust him. I trust them inherently to make the right choices with their evaluations. So we'll see where this goes after his weekend visit. I'm sure he'll have more visits after this. It's not going to be a recruitment that's done anytime soon. Maybe not. Maybe it'll be done after this weekend. We'll see. But if Oklahoma can land that, that'd be a big feather in the cap for the Oklahoma Sooners defense moving into 2025. Another feather in the cap, Michael Fasusi having another big day at the Under Armour Next camp. We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. And today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Well, that's definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. rocketmoney.com/locked on today. And again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Michael Fasusi continued to turn heads at the Under Armour Next camp. He was a top performer, the number 2 top performer on the first 2 days of camp, and then won On3's MVP award from the UA Next camp, Jay.
Are we surprised that the crown jewel of the Bill Bedenbaugh offensive line recruitment was out there dominating like that? Not so much, but at the same time, I'm excited because it just confirmed what we all expected out of him coming out there. Like, who was it? Cody Belair. I think he's newer on the beat for On3 National Scout. He's just been starting to go to all of these All-American events. And he said, this is the best offensive lineman performance I've seen since joining On3 and being able to attend these All-American events. Outside of losing 1 rep of one-on-ones, Fasusi was basically flawless all week long. Extremely impressive. And he wasn't going up against no slouches. He was going up against some dogs. And Fasusi has been holding up every single week, John. And it makes us go back to the question we asked yesterday's show. Is he going to find a way into the starting lineup? I think he has the capabilities, man. If he's got the motor for it, there's a good chance for it, man. And the only thing I ever feared about a 5-star at that level is that they're so good that they don't think they need to continue it once they get, into the next level. Marvin Jones Jr. could be an example. He was a 5-star in everything but ESPN, and things just didn't work out for him, unfortunately. And we've seen that before here with the slew of wide receivers. Heck, we had a whole wide receiver room of 5-stars that ended up having to transfer out because it just didn't work. But I don't see that with Fasusi. I've heard nothing but great things about his work ethic. So him and Foger, it's going to be fun to see on this team.
Yeah, it's easy to sit here and say, no, he won't be able to be a starter. I said the same thing about Jaden Jackson. I didn't think he'd be able to make an impact right away at defensive tackle, a position notoriously difficult to make the jump, whether it's going from high school to college to the NFL. It's a really difficult spot to be a day one starter at because the level of physicality increases exponentially when you go from the high school to the college ranks or from the college to the NFL ranks. Well, Jaden Jackson was able to do it. Not only was he able to earn a starting role week 1 at a fall camp, he was able to be really good, be one of the better players on the defense for this team year 1. And that's not even a shot at anybody else on the defense. That just means Jaden Jackson was that good. And so to sit here and say, no, there's no chance that a guy like Michael Fasusi could not start for the Oklahoma Sooners, week 1 of the 2025 season. I mean, I'm not going to put it past him. I mean, he's just done everything right. And Charles Power over On3, he called him the most physical person at the point of attack during the camp. And I think that says a lot. The dude wants to be physical. He wants to get violent. And you need that on the offensive line. We discussed that on the show yesterday. Oklahoma's offensive line, one of the biggest critiques that you heard about this group from guys like Gabe Eichert and Teddy Lehman and many others who really get a chance to watch the All-22 and dig in deep on these guys is that they just weren't physical enough. So you gotta, yes, he's a high school kid coming into Norman, but you've seen it before. You've seen down there in Austin, you've seen true freshman offensive tackles be able to step right in and be successful. Maybe you'll have some ups and downs, because you will with true freshmen, but you're probably going to have more ups than you will downs. And it's only going to help their development to get them on the field and let them play and make mistakes. So again, I'm not going to put it past him. He was the crown jewel of the recruiting class, and there's no reason why he won't be able to come in and actually compete for a role, whether he starts week 1 or week 5 or week 7. It would not surprise me if he's a starter at some point during the 2025 season, because everything's up for grabs. Aside from maybe Troy Everett at center and maybe Fabechi Wiwu at right guard, everything is up for grabs. You have the potential to make every position along the offensive line a legit position battle.
Yeah, that's 100% true, because with both the Jakes and Jacob Sexton and Jake Taylor both coming off injury, they're going to have to work themselves back into that spot. Heath Ozida has been working it hard on that left guard spot. He can end up winning it. Eddie Pierre-Louis is fighting to get himself into that starting rotation. So, yeah, I think that a lot of those positions are going to be up for grabs, and the opportunity may be there for Fogier as well as Fasusi to get in there. But you still got Isaiah Autry-Dent. I mean, you got on a whole nother line. The good thing is that we're going into next year with more veteran presence on the line. Now, we've still got a few of them as redshirt freshmen as well as true sophomores. But the good thing is you still got some vets and juniors and redshirt sophomores and juniors. So you've got those 3-year guys actually being able to play next season. And then, of course, you mentioned Troy Everett, who owns that center spot. And if I'm correct, Branson Hickman technically has 1 more year left that he could play. So the line's going to be more veteran. And you're right, the physicality is the critical thing. And the one time that we actually showed that we can do it whenever we lock in, Bama. That was the game where we showed that when we lock in, we going to get in there and push people around. Was talking about it yesterday, the Georgia-Notre Dame game. And the one thing you saw out of Notre Dame is that, Georgia, it appears they walked into that game thinking that, we'll just push them around. And that's what Notre Dame did to them. Instead, they pushed them around. They ran all over them. And they only got 203 yards total offense. So what you want to have is a group of guys that are just nasty enough and super physical. I think Michael Fasusi can lead that charge. Daniel Afalava is that way. We know Owen Hullenbeck is that way. He's a power lifter. He don't ain't a wrestler. He ain't trying to lose. He ain't losing no one-on-one battles with nobody in their hands. So, and it's Sean Hutton right there next to Fasusi, who did really good stuff at the guard right next to him. So you've got yourself some guys who are going to be able to push each other. Now we need to get on there with Schmitty, get the weight up, and just go execute.
That's right. And again, let competition determine how this is all going to play out. And if it comes to be that one of your best 5 is a freshman offensive tackle, then so be it. Let it be. Figure out a way to work with it and let them learn from it. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel on YouTube, Unfair Sports, as well. Follow me at John 9 Williams. You can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all your social media platforms, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you like to do your social media stuff. We are there. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer.
Sooner.